If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome to Generation Breakdown. If you're back after our first podcast and want to hear some more from us, thank you for coming back. Welcome to Generation Breakdown, where we take pop culture and we analyze it to the utmost degree. Why? Because we can. I'm Derrick, I'm here with my buddy Jamal, and today we're going to look at the college experience and how it's portrayed in media, movies, TV, what have you. Now, I think we can agree that the first real college movie where we sit down and we go, I want that to happen to me, is Animal House. That one just stands out. I didn't get to watch it until I think it was right before my going into freshman year of college. But holy shit, that put in this kind of image of this is what college life is going to be. And me as an 18-year-old became very impressionable about that. And I understood that was a comedy, but at the same time, I'm like, does this really happen?
Yeah, Animal House, that's before my time. That's the funny thing. And
it's before both our times.
Right, and that is the granddaddy of all, college movies. And it was the toga parties, the crazy sex, and just the frat houses and whatever. Damn. That was yeah, there was almost kind of expectation of, you kind of want to kind of follow that road, have that experience and everything, for college because, it's your first time getting out. It's your first time getting out from your parents, so it's like you don't have to answer to anybody. And for some reason, just people just lose their shit, and we just...
I'm an adult. I do what I want.
Right, we do what... That's exactly, we do whatever the fuck we want to.
Go live forever.
And we feel like, and it's... We're not really aware of any consequences because we kind of feel like, we don't really generally give a shit. So, and even though there may be, we're not essentially aware of that. So, it's... Animal House was the one that kind of really set that off and kind of, like you said, put the idea in our minds of what it should be.
Even though, it's a comedy, we still sit there and go, are there really toga parties? Are we going to get that drunk?
And someone out there is going, yes, I did get that drunk.
And yes, there were toga parties. I remember I went to Brockport, and one of the things we would do is there would be some people lived off campus, so what they would do is they would have parties, and we had themed parties, and they always do Cohen costume. There was a jungle party. You came in as some kind of jungle animal or something related to the jungle. We had a monkey wrangler, safari people. We had some girls wearing the cat tail and the cat ears going, I'm a kitty. But we had parties like that. We had the ugly sweater parties. I think that was our version of the toga party.
Yeah, trying to do your own thing, right?
Yeah. In fact, I even went to a toga party at one point.
Where the hell you get a toga?
You don't buy a toga, you just take a bedsheet. Oh. But yeah, this actually exists, and I'm wondering, did the guys who wrote it, Harold Remus, who was one of the writers for it, may he rest in peace, was this something that, the movie clearly didn't make this up, but was it someone's college experience that they were imposing on this? Or did you just go, no, this happened, it was a mild experience, but let's make this even more extreme?
Yeah, that was extreme. It was... Damn. I mean, my experience in college was this. I went to a religious institution. And I'll be honest with you, it's like any other college, it's just not up front.
It happens, but...
No one talks about it in public. But everyone knows everyone tends to know what's going on. And, there were some parties I went to where, they could be that crazy, but not all of them were that crazy. And it seemed kind of almost on the one level kind of like an exaggeration to some degree. But, I was being from Broadport, it's like I knew crazy shit like that happened. I remember walking home from school when I was in high school, and I passed one of the frat houses, and there's a half naked woman, half naked girl laying out on the front lawn,
was it the Roxbury? Did you walk by the Roxbury?
I don't even remember what it was. I just remember. I just remember walking by and with a bunch of friends. We're just kind of like, what the hell? And yeah, and then another time where I walked by another frat house and you can hear people hearing sex out the window. So it's just like, yeah, I knew I was always aware of that, and I've been to some parties and stuff like that, but I was never that big into it just because of my own personality. But yeah, it was always kind of like the initial impression was that it was like a bubble, and I kind of think of that now. It's like I think all that entire experience is kind of like a bubble, where we kind of think of ourselves as kind of like perhaps invincible, perhaps like
I'm gonna live forever.
But it was just kind of like a very kind of bizarre time, almost like you're almost in a dream, almost. But as far as I always thought the media kind of put an odd kind of skew on it, because it kind of said this is all the college experience was, or this is what it should be, and if you're not living this life, then you're doing something wrong. And I clearly remember feeling that unspoken peer pressure, where if you weren't getting laid every other night, and you weren't at all the parties and shit like that, and you weren't out getting drunk, whatever, then clearly you're fucked up. You're doing something wrong. And
you're not being a man.
No, you're not even being a man. You're not being a human being, a normal human being, I guess would really kind of be the best way to kind of put it. And I never liked that. I never let that kind of pressure or anything. Also, too, what Animal House did, it kind of presented the frat house, the Greek houses, as like where everything happened. But at the same time, they were still kind of like the good guys. And then that changed with Revenge of the Nerds. That came out, for those of you who are not that old, that came out in 1982. And was basically about a nerd frat house that was being harassed, quote unquote, by the jock frat houses, which was your Animal House kind of frat house. And from that point on, frat houses kind of took on a negative kind of connotation. It was still kind of like where everything happened, but at the same time, there's this whole idea of, but they're also assholes and douchebags.
Well, I think if you look at the two frat houses from Animal House and compare them to the one from Revenge of the Nerds, in Animal House, the quote-unquote bad guys, the antagonists, they're very preppy in how they behave. They're top marks on their grades. They help out with the community. But they have this dickish attitude. And when you look at the other frat house, the one you root for, was it Delta Tau Chi, the Delta House, they are the misfits. They are the drunkards. They are the ones who just party all out. I mean, there's at one point where they're pulled into the dean's office, and he goes, Budo Butowski. And he reads off his grade point average. It's a low grade point average. And he goes, Daniel Simpson Day has no grade point average. And it's just like these guys who don't even show up to class or do the bare minimum work, and you're rooting for them. And then when we get to Revenge of the Nerds, their thing is that they were trying to establish a fraternity, and it's kind of flipped where they're the ones who get the top marks. They're the really intelligent ones. For the most part, there are some that are just kind of misfits, such as you end up with Booger, who's not top marks, he's just like an outcast. But when you look at the antagonist, the Jock House, their grades aren't that high. I think that's actually, in one of the movies, that's how they win up on them, is that. So what you end up with is, yeah, you got the misfits here in Animal House, but you're rooting for them, and they're drunk, and they're lazies, and then we end up with the Revenge of the Nerds. It's the unlikely group that's brought together, because fraternities have the idea of brotherhood. They just band together to form that idea.
Right. It was... I think with a lot of it was still, the idea of having fun. It was still fun, because you're in your 20s, and you want to have fun. Because, I said earlier, you're out of the first time. So even... You
don't want to be an adult yet?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but that's your idea of being an adult. Is you're having fun doing what you want. That's being an adult, because you're not answering to your parents anymore.
Right.
Or anything like that. And it was interesting because, yeah, we do have that. We always have that idea of this is kind of what it means to be, to be an adult to be doing that kind of thing. But and even though we have this idea that the people who go to who at colleges go to these parties and everything are just kind of like assholes or just like the low in the morality scale, it's still something that we want because it's fun. It's still fun, and stuff. And
well, you look at them and go, yeah, like they're low in the morality scale or they're assholes, but look at their status or look at the fun that they're having. I want that.
They're living their life to the fullest, and I think that's something that, as a culture, we tend to be afraid of. Is that we are always afraid of missing out on life and then dying.
Yeah.
And whatnot, and
no regrets.
Exactly. Yeah, that which I think is bullshit. But anyway, but yeah, it just that whole aspect of it, that whole concept, and it was interesting that I thought these movies really for the longest time really hit hard and kind of emphasized that this is what college life is supposed to be like. And I think the first movie that really kind of, for me anyway, that I really saw where that was just about the culture wise that said no, it's other than this was with Honors. And that wasn't thinking
with Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, with Brendan Fraser. I think that was back in '92. And even though it was kind of speaking on like a social issue of homelessness, it was still showing college life because it takes place at Harvard, as a lot this studying where you're trying to do your thesis and this intense studying and all, and you're in these doing with these old professors and it's very like super intellectual. And I thought that's the first time where it really became known that there is more to college than just partying your brains out. There's this, and it'd be sure they had their parties, but that was one aspect of the college life, and it was showing this other aspect of it, which was studying and trying to have a life. You worry about money, if your parents can give you the money or not so you can come back the next year, things like that. There was never really college movies that really kind of displayed that aspect of those everyday concerns of if you don't meet a certain grade point, are they going to kick you out, and all that kind of thing.
Well, there's a weird paradigm shift is what we see is a lot of college movies tend to be comedies. Mm-hmm. That's where we get the rampant sex, the drug use, the partying. And then there's certain movies that portray it, I guess it would be more of like a drama or more realistically. And With Honors is one, Dead Poet Society is another. But then we start to see in the late 90s, early 2000s, is we see those issues brought up in comedies. We start seeing like, oh shit, if the grade point average isn't there, so-and-so is going to get kicked out, i.e. Van Wilder. That's a serious issue, but it touches it in a comedic light. That fits the tone of the movie that they were going for.
Right. But at the same time, do you feel that your friends like were aware of that point, or were they just kind of focused on all the comedy shtick?
Well, they're focused on the comedy shtick. Let's be honest. I mean, the movie like How High, Van Wilder, yeah, you're focusing more of like, look, that's funny. You're not focusing on the serious issue that they brought up that they're kind of just glancing over.
Right, and that's kind of the thing with that, where when you're trying to deal with any kind of those kind of things, is that what are you going to pay more attention to? So I was just speaking, so for example, a couple of days ago, I was at the coffee house, writing and everything.
Okay.
And I'm talking with one of my friends there who works there, and I was telling him about the movie The Neighbors. If you haven't seen it, that's the movie with Seth Rogen and Zac Efron that just came out about
I'm going to keep a tally mark about how many podcasts we bring up Neighbors.
Right, we probably should, but because it was a great movie, but yeah, it's basically about this frat house that moves into a suburban neighborhood, and these two neighbors who have to deal with that and a little war, quote unquote, that they have with them. But
I wouldn't put quotes around. That was a war. I mean, there was vandalism.
It was pretty insane. But point being though was that excuse me, sorry, was that it was really kind of portraying this kind of whole aspect of like you know, my friend was saying that he thought it was a horrible movie. He had seen it. He thought it was horrible, and this is why he thought it was horrible, because he thought that when the next school year comes around, they're going to be college students going to be trying to imitate that exact same thing.
I'm okay with the Robert De Niro party.
Right, but at the same time, there will be other neighbors who won't. You know, they don't like all the noise around their houses if they have like babies sleeping or
right.
All that kind of shit. You know,
and I think that happens on every campus when there's a frat house that lives by a residential area. Is that like there's those who live there, the townies is what we used to call them. I don't know if they still are or what, but like they get complaints. I mean, when the college is in full swing, right now we're in a college town. There's a good 3-4 bars all within walking distance of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that feeling that, because I went to college here, and then after college I actually lived in town for a little bit. So I got to experience both sides. And when there's college going on, you hear a lot more of the townies complaining about, these college kids here and there, like they're throwing stuff in our yards. And then when the college kids are gone, remember The Wiz? And when the Wicked Witch is dead, and her worker slaves like unzip themselves, and they start singing "Can You Feel a Brand New Day?" That's what that was like. Like the moment, like, bam, graduation happened. They unzipped everything, and then it just became the townies take back over, and then you found that some of the townies are worse than the college kids.
Right. I don't know. I mean. But that's what this guy was saying. He was saying that there's going to be vandalism. There's going to be all these issues with neighbors complaining about stuff happening to their house, and that they didn't want that. Because essentially what he was basically saying was, and I actually said this to him. If you're in college about that age, you're not that smart.
No, you're not.
You mean just that? You mean you have not that you're that you're not saying that you're born stupid, but that. What you shouldn't be doing because it's not the best idea, but you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And to him, that was like, it just was not a good thing, so he thought the movie was going to be horrible because of that. So that was what was interesting about that whole thing. When that's kind of the concern of college movies, is that whenever a college movie tries to imitate something that's more realistic other than just parties, there's the whole idea of, well, what the hell are they going to pay attention to more?
Right.
And stuff like that. So, that's kind of where, that whole thing. Now, as far as where movies have gone since then, there have been movies that have tried to, touch on it more serious. So, for example, and this was a good movie, the 1995 movie Higher Learning, which was basically dealing with racism in colleges and just kind of that whole thing, and how that kind of was still displaying the college experience. So you're experimenting with stuff. You're kind of thrown into this huge mix where you kind of have to find a group to belong to, and that you don't find that group, then you kind of start getting a little bit messed up in the head. The movie kind of takes it to an extreme where the one guy who does not end up fitting in anywhere, he ends up falling with a bunch of neo-Nazis on the college campus. But despite that, though, that's always an issue with college movies. You try to be more serious. You try to kind of touch on, there's this other aspect to it you have to think about and deal with and everything else. And I think they are starting to bring that up more often. And also too, I think there's also kind of return of that not all frat houses are bad. So again, going back to the neighbors, one of the things I liked about that movie was Zac Efron's character. He kind of tries to play like the ultimate frat president. He's getting laid, all the time. Good looking guy, whatever, and
he has his good moments.
Yeah, he has a moment. He has these moments where he's actually a genuinely nice guy.
Like the hazing one.
Right. He's about to haze this kid who just stood up to him, and he takes him into his closet and he just says to him,
What's
what are
up,
you doing?
guy?
Right, just says, what are you doing?
Is
I
there a
liked
problem?
you. I was about to get you in here. Why are you doing this now? And the kid doesn't just
I thought you were
collapse.
doing better than everyone else. Like, you go up to my room, I got the Season of Girls on there, try yourself a bath.
Right. And it was just like, it's like this guy was not genuinely a dick, but he feels like he's being pushed to be one. So that was the interesting thing about that movie, was that it was kind of presenting, it was kind of reintroducing the whole concept of they're not bad, but they're still crazy.
Like, they still are at that age where it's like, oh, I can do anything. But at the same time, they're human.
Kind of, yeah,
And
yeah. Mm.
What, to my credit, or what I give them credit to for that movie was, you didn't see the frat house as this one lumped thing. I mean, if you look at Animal House, they're the preps. And they're just one kind of thing. Revenge of the Nerds, they're the jocks. And they're just one kind of thing. To them, when they made, or in Neighbors, when they made that frat house, you had different personalities. And you actually got to see them as individuals more. You saw those who just got high. You saw the president, who wants to do something and be remembered. And then you had the vice president who was, yeah, this is fun, but my grades are important.
Right, he was aware that that wasn't the end all and be all of life,
Right.
and there was more beyond it he had to think about. And it was, and I like that they present that whole aspect of there's this other aspect of call it to life in college that should be considered and everything. But at the same time, though, too, I don't think that there's almost kind of it's the same kind of stereotypes people of that age, particularly millennials, because it kind of assumes them to be just oversexed, drug-crazed dumbasses. Yeah. If I was to be honest, I mean, that concept's been around, to be honest, since the 80s. That's nothing new, but at the same time, there's this more of an expectation of you're in college now. Okay, you're a fucking asshole. You're not going to really give a shit, and use up a lot of money when you get out. And, which sucks. I'm not justifying that at all, but because I've known people in college, friends in colleges and stuff like that now, who are not like that. Right. They have lives, yes, but they don't have to get insane about it. And they do still think about those kind of things. Now, just to be clear here, I'm not trying to judge people who actually go out and do insane stuff unless you're actually hurting somebody, because then...
Or yourself.
Right. I've had friends who have been raped, in college at those kind of parties and stuff like that. So, there is a seriousness to it that if it's going that far, then yeah, okay, something needs to be done. But as long as it, short of that, yeah, if you want to go out and if that's what you want to do, to go out and have a good time, knock yourself out. Okay, fine. But at the same time, that's not everybody. Right. And not everybody should be kind of cast into that mold of this is what you're going to be. And on top of that, I feel like, for the people who are in that mold, give them room. I think they should be given room to, maybe they want to be something more at some point or whatever. Yeah. Or maybe even now. Give them allow them that chance. Don't cut it off just because they happen to fit a particular image that you yourself have been trained to think of college students because of the movies.
You're projecting your own views on them instead of actually looking at them as an individual.
Exactly, yes.
Now, one of the things I do find interesting, I've been kind of talking about, is how we see the different college tropes portrayed throughout the years. Is, Animal House, we root for the losers, or the quote-unquote losers, those who are the misfits, and the outcasts, who have this low grade point average. The 80s with Revenge of the Nerds, that switches up. And then in the 90s, early 2000s, we start to see something a little different as far as that. And that is, we see movies that more focus less on a frat, but more on the individual. You end up with movies like Van Wilder, where it's just like, he's one guy. Yeah, he has a group of friends and he's well respected by them, but at the same time, he's just one guy. And then when we start seeing more frat house stuff, it becomes more and more of, they're not the stereotype. They're not just one entity with many heads. They're not this Hydra. They are individuals, and we get to see certain characters pop out. Of course, you're not going to see a full frat house where you get to know every individual. There's always going to be the extras that are there. There's this weird thing where I feel like it becomes more and more relatable. We get out of the extremes from Animal House, where it's just or Animal House, or even Revenge of Nerds, where it's like, these are really asshole jocks. I'm not them. Or these are really nerdy nerds. Like, these are the pocket protector, tape on the glasses nerds. And you get to actually see people, for the most part people, yes, they're characters, but they become a little more like, you know what, I knew people like that in college.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the interesting thing about the progression of those movies and how society tended to think was what was allowed. So again, going back, what was kind of expected as well. So going back to Animal House, there was one scene in there that I did not like, and to this day I hate it.
Where they're driving to go into the club.
They drive in to go to a club, and the one guy brings his girlfriend with him, and it's a black club. And the guy and I guess one of the guys they end up sitting with comes onto the girl. The girl's clearly uncomfortable. Now, whether because this was black, because this was taking place during the '60s,
Yeah.
Or whether it's just because he's coming on to me, knows I'm with my boyfriend or whatever. I'm not quite sure, but they basically just leave her there, and I did not like that. I did not like
the flipping of the switchblade right there.
The implications of that,
yeah,
and stuff like that. The other thing and yet that was almost kind of expected and almost kind of seemingly allowed. Another thing was that in Revenge of the Nerds, and this has just recently become an issue, is what a lot of people have interpreted as misogynistic scenes. So, like the nerd frat house, where they're doing all these, they're doing all this stuff, trying to get back at the people who've just been picking on them. So they're putting cameras in the girls' dorms to see them change their clothes. The big one, the one guy ends up
the Darth Vader rape.
Yeah, he sleeps with the head, the rival president's head's girlfriend, dressed up as Darth Vader, which he thinks it's her boyfriend. It's actually him
because he has the mask on too.
Right, exactly.
And then
there is the one character, the character Lamar, he's black and he's gay, and because apparently he speaks in a high voice, has the whole kind of feminine motion, and in terms of
let's lump minorities into one thing.
Basically, that was there was stuff like that where it was just that was considered okay,
and let's also have him do a bit of a rap.
Right, and that I didn't mind, to be honest. But at the same time, no, I mean, in terms of what was being allowed, it was, in terms of, stuff that if you live in today, and you're just kind of coming off today's news and stuff like that, you look at that now, and you may find that offensive. But back in that time, I was that was okay because they were still the good guys. They weren't going around, being assholes to everybody and stuff like that. They're kind of nice guys, kind of doing this stuff, trying to get back and trying to get ahead, trying to get accepted, trying to be recognized.
But at the same time, I have to bring up the Robot Chicken sketch of Revenge of the Nerds, where they pretty much recap all the things that they do, and they're in court, and it's assault, rape.
Absolutely. If that had been today, their asses would have been in jail. But at the same time, so would the other frat house.
Yeah.
They're called the other frat house. That was a clear case of that was beyond that, because at one point they completely destroy and trash the house, and don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
So they would have gotten arrested too. There would have been arrests on both sides. If that had been real life. But it was interesting. And another movie I think was called He Got Game, and that was a movie where about this black high school students being propositioned by these colleges to play basketball for them, and in one of the colleges they sent him a couple of blonde white girls to kind of basically seduce him, and everything and stuff like that, and just how there's this kind of whole kind of corporate undersided thing kind of going on where they're kind of playing stereotypes to get you to go to their school to get them more prestige. So it's odd to me, I guess, seeing how all these things kind of reflect society in terms of what's allowed and what's not, while still being the quote unquote good guy? I mean, what's your interpretation of all that?
Well, it just speaks from us as a society what we allow in media and where that ranks in terms of the rating scale for films and TV. Times have changed. There's certain things that you can get away with now that you couldn't before, and there's certain things that you got away with in the past that you can't now because we're so PC. Or at least we want to be more PC and politically correct about certain things how they portray.
Yeah. I mean, but as far as your personal experience, like, people, like, friends that you know in college, and stuff like that. And, like, for example, I had one friend in college, and her name was Summer.
Okay.
And I ran into her one night, and she was just kind of very, very upset because, everyone on her campus thought she was a slut. And everything because of how she dressed. And even one of the guys that come on to her, the first thing that he did when she went on a date with him in his car was basically show him his dick, and she was kind of upset about that because she wanted to be seen for more than that. So yeah, it's easy to kind of talk about this whole kind of larger society thing, but on an individual level, as far as your experiences and people
okay,
what's your take on all of that, blended with all that shit?
Well, it's something where, from the group of friends I knew, because when you go to college, you tend to hang out with people who are more within the department that you're in because you spend more time with them.
Okay.
Unless, of course, there's someone that you met in the class and you really connect. Or people you went to college with that went to the same high school as you. But...
yeah, I was a bit of a social butterfly. I was all over the place, but yeah, go ahead.
See, I wasn't. I'm a little more of an introvert.
Right.
But as far as the experiences, I've seen people who got kicked out of college because their grades weren't there. And they were good friends, and they just kind of disappeared. There were some people that said, yeah, I'm doing this. I don't know when we'll see you again. And there were some people that just fell off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, there's certain people that sit there and go, slut, slut, slut. There's certain people that have different things happen to them. I didn't really get the full college experience because I lived at home. So I didn't get to experience living on campus. Mm-hmm. But I witnessed some weird things, and one of them was, okay, what was it? Valentine's Day, 2000, spring, yeah, it would be the spring semester 2008. Me and a few people were like, no, we have no dates. Let's go get food. So we go meet at one of their dorms, and then we walk across campus to, not the dining hall, because dining halls were closed. It was called Tracks, where you could get subs and pizza and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're walking by one of the freshman dorms, and it's at the ground level. The window, like the blinds aren't closed, and all of a sudden we just see this girl. She's naked. Dude pushes her on the bed and just goes to town. Windows wide open. We're like, what the fuck is going on?
The lights were on too?
Lights were on. Like, boom! You could see everything. And then I remember, out of the corner of my eye, I turn and I look, and it's just like, it's her roommate, and she's on the computer checking Facebook. Like, nothing is phasing this girl. This is just average Valentine's Day stuff. And we're sitting there. It's the three of us, me, Alicia, and Ethan. We're like, it was one of those things where it was like a train wreck. You want to go or leave, but you can't. It's not like we're going, yeah, go to town. No, we're like, what the fuck? We're trying to analyze this. Go, who the fuck? At least close the blinds. And what the fuck are you doing on the computer? Get out of there.
Right.
Like, who in the right mind says or goes, yeah, this is normal. Click, 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 click. Like, that's my crazy college story, besides me getting really drunk or getting really high and going to Tim Hortons, getting really nervous, just eating a bunch of Timbits.
Yeah, wow.
Like, I went to parties, I had fun, I was the drunk guy. I remember one time there was Jungle Juice, you got mixed every now and then. They're like, how are we going to keep mixing? So it's like, take me to Walmart. And I get a fish tank filter, and I just like, this is how, guys. We put it in the thing, and it just worked that night. Build a little cage, that way the fruit doesn't get into it.
Yeah.
But I also when I went to college, like, there came a point where, for me, it was like, I realized that unless I was really involved in, because I'm a theater major, unless I was really involved in the show, I wasn't getting invited to certain parties, and these are people who I felt like, these are my comrades in arms, these are my friends. And
it was very cliquish.
It was very cliquish, where it's just like, as soon as that show was over, just like, no one wanted anything to do with me. Like, there was at one point, there was a party, and I talked to my buddy Vinny. He's just like, yeah, you know, like, weren't you invited? Like, no, I had no idea this was going on. He goes, I thought you were invited. I thought, like, you couldn't go because you had work, because I work too. And there was just, like, certain people that didn't want to deal with me, and some of them, they thought that, you know, I was very egotistical about how I wanted certain things done, and that came from me working in the drama club. And my position there was strictly with contracts, and go like, no, you can't do this. And then there were certain people who, like, I would help anyone if they had a show, but when I asked them, they're like, nope, fuck you. Because I was so willing to help other people.
I don't know. That's something that still continues after college, though. I mean, hell, I've experienced that, you know, outside of, you know, it's been at least 10 years since I've been back to college and got my master's and everything. And they still do that. So there people still do that and everything. So,
oh, yeah.
I mean,
what,
I guess in a way that kind of sets you up for how you're going to behave after you get out in a certain way as well.
But within college, like, yeah, like in a work environment or with friends that you hang out with, yeah, that's going to happen. But in college, like, you're so intertwined, and it's not so much this is who I work with. You become, this is who I take classes with. We go through the same shit together. Mm-hmm. That, in a way, like, the department that you work in is kind of like a fraternity, and a lot of departments have a fraternity attached to them. In a way. There's certain ones that do. And there's, like, yeah, those friends that kind of, like, push me to the side, yeah, I don't talk to them anymore. Like, yeah, we have Facebook, and I can do that. Like, I can get hold of them. But at the same time, do I? No. But there are certain friends I had in college that was just like, yeah, we still talk. In fact, my plan is a year from now to move in with some of them because we work together as a team so well that we want to work together still and work on certain projects. And it's like, this will be awesome.
So, what is your feeling then in terms of starting to close out? What is your feeling then of, you know, do you feel like college movies are very accurate in terms of how they present, you know, real life? Or do you feel like there's something lacking or something that should be done or maybe shouldn't be done? And where is that going? And, you know, as far as your view of that?
Well, you end up with this different take on with comedies and dramas. With dramas, they hit subjects really hard. And they try to push it. They're trying to pull at the emotional strings of the audience to go, yes, you want to stand there and go, this movie deserves an Oscar. But they hit the subject so well that you recognize them more. And then when you actually experience them, you realize that, from my experience, I can't speak for everyone, it was a little underwhelming. Because you were expecting it to be this big emotional thing. But in terms of comedies, yes, there's going to be sex, there's going to be drugs, there's going to be parties, there's going to be this. But they up that ante and just what kooky situations can we throw them in? Were there people that I knew when I went to college that did nothing but party? Yes. Did they last long? No. They were out of there faster than anything. But you end up with them, I guess I would say, upping the ante or overplaying certain aspects of what their goal is. Now, in terms of movies now, I think that certain directors and certain actors, they know when to go, like, okay, we can hit the subject right here, but we can do it in this slightly comedic light to make this joke at the end hit a little bit better. I aim more for comedies when I go to movies, so that's what I'm used to seeing. But I'm seeing it be less about kooky, crazy fun time, and more about being more character driven instead of situation driven. And I think it's becoming more relatable with its characters. Do I think we're ever going to get the one that portrays college life perfectly? No, because it's media and they're always going to have some kind of objective, maybe just strictly to make you laugh, strictly to go for an Oscar, or something that they want to push on you as an audience. How about you?
The way college movies and how it's played and real life work have kind of gone hand in hand with each other. Okay. There's been a little bit of both, where life imitates art and art imitates life. And it's just kind of this weird circle that tends to happen. At the same time, though, hopefully, you know, movies will kind of touch more on that. Not in the Revenge of the Nerds kind of a fashion.
Okay.
But in kind of a fashion I mean, we want to do it comedic, sure, but just kind of address that so that, you know, it kind of speaks to everybody's college experience. So yes, you have your party people, and yes, you got your studiers, and yes, you got those who are in between, and yes, you got your drama people and and singers and dancers and blah 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 blah. And I guess that's kind of how I feel about that. Is that at first, it was a little bit of both, where they both kind of imitated each other, on and off, and now it's kind of starting to approach a thing of, you know, taking some sort of sense of social responsibility. And I guess in a sense, for the last time for this cast,
go ahead.
Going back to The Neighbors, at the end of the movie, spoilers by the way if you haven't seen it yet, but at the end of the movie, where the neighbors finally went out, you know, because they create this tremendous hellhole havoc that happens, and the frat house president takes responsibility. The cops show up, and the frat house president takes responsibility for it, and tells everyone else to get out. He's going to take responsibility for the whole thing.
Go, you have a future.
Right, and that's new, you know. Before, it's just like, everybody get the hell out. You know, no, this guy is taking responsibility for something that he did, and he says that, you know, I was the one who took this too far. I need to take responsibility for it. You know, so I think if they could do movies where they can still do comedy or drama or whatever, but include other aspects of it as well that are starting to be kind of played out and that students all over the place are dealing with, that would be helpful.
Okay, well, I think we're running out of time, so unfortunately I do have to say this. Nothing is over until we say it's over. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no. But unfortunately, this podcast is over. Let us know what your college experience was. Tell us some stories. Tell us if you fall into any one of these movie molds. Or just let us know if there's something, an aspect of college life and media that we didn't touch on that you want us to. Because in future podcasts, we might bring it up. You can email us your thoughts at genbreakdown@gmail.com. That's GEN breakdown@gmail.com. Signing off, I'm Derrick.
And I'm Jamal.
And I hope to see you again soon.